Hello, my name is Stephen Hughes, member of the European Parliament. I'm one of the Vice Presidents of the Socialist and Democratic Group in the Parliament, and for most of my time in the European Parliament, almost 30 years now, I've been an active member of the European Parliament's Intergroup on Trade Unions. For many years, 20 years in fact, I was the convener and co-chair of that Intergroup. I'm really pleased that you've organised this seminar today, that you're attending this seminar today on how trade unions can monitor and influence EU decision making. I think it's a very important exercise that you're engaged in. The figures are quite astronomical. You probably have already been told today that around the European institutions there are around about 50,000 professional lobbyists. Around about 90% of the contacts the European Commission's Directorate General for Industry and Enterprise receive are from not trade unionists, but 90% from the business and industry lobbies. The trade unions really do need to make their voice heard. We need to have as great an impact on the work of the European Commission and the other institutions as the business lobby. Why is that so? Well, particularly now, in the midst of this depression and with the European Commission we have at the moment, trade unions really do need to raise their game. I know a lot in the trade union world have worried about a deregulation agenda inside the European Commission. Well, it's not so much a deregulation agenda, it's a no regulation, no new regulation agenda, particularly in the areas of employment and labour law. And yet there are huge issues that do need to be addressed. What about the whole area of decent work, or the lack of decent work, quality work within the European Union? We need to get the Commission to act to end the scourge of low pay, of zero-hour contracts. Just look at the ongoing and inordinate delay in the Commission publishing its new strategy on occupational safety and health. It's more than a year overdue and we still don't know when it will be adopted. There are some very important outstanding areas of risk that need to be adopted there. So we really do need to up the game of the trade union world and make sure that the Commission listen. We need to have as great an impact on the Commission as the business lobby. One important thing is please respond to consultations from the Commission. I've lost count of the number of commissioners who've said to me, well, we've had a consultation exercise and this great stack of responses here came from the business lobby, but we only got 4 or 5 from the trade unions. Why is that? Well, it's because the trade union will behave responsibly. Rather than sending in a separate response from every trade union branch at local level, we make sure that we channel them through a national trade union congress or the European Trade Union Confederation to try to focus. That means that the Commission gets 5 or 6 responses from the trade union world as against several hundred from the business world, and they literally weigh the responses and act accordingly. We need to make sure that we do respond in numbers when a consultation exercise is launched by the Commission. Not just for the sake of sending paper in, but making sure that every aspect of the exercise is covered in the response to the consultation. It's very important in that exercise to make sure that the European lobbying effort and presence is linked up to the national, the regional and the sectoral levels as well. It's a two-way process, it's a two-way conduit. You need to make sure that the tripwires at all of those levels are aware of what's going on in Brussels, so they can alert you at European level when something needs to be addressed in the lobbying effort with the European institutions. And you in turn need to make sure that you disseminate information adequately to make sure everyone at every level is fully aware of developments. Now, the important point is, how should you lobby MEPs? Well, I suppose one of the basic, the fundamental rules is get to the point and keep it simple. That's not because most members of the European Parliament are unintelligent. They usually are quite intelligent, believe it or not, but they are extremely busy. They receive a tremendous amount of material. Make your lobbying material very easy to understand and digest. If members need more detail, they will come back to you and seek that detail. And certainly at later stages of a lobbying exercise over a particular piece of legislation, for example, you will want to focus upon key members in the committee responsible, the rapporteur, the person appointed to draw up the report on the subject, and the shadows from the other political groups. And you'll want to give them as much detailed information as you can. And they would probably welcome you sitting down with them to help draft amendments. It's sometimes a godsend if you can help draft and frame amendments, particularly on technical subjects where you have a considerable degree of knowledge. I have a reputation for working on legislation in the health and safety field, but it's mainly because I've worked with experts from the trade union world, working with them to draft amendments on a whole range of directives that we've adopted over the years. Good lobbying, there are some good examples of good lobbying. We've just been dealing with a directive on the enforcement of the 1996 directive on the posting of workers. That's been extremely well organised by the trade unions involved. People were brought, for example, from the food, the transport and construction sectors, real life people who work in those sectors, who were able to tell stories of how they have been exploited because of a failure to properly enforce that 1996 directive. That had a real impact. We arranged meetings with members from all of the political groups involved in drafting that legislation. It had a real impact. An example of a bad way to lobby was a directive we worked on a few years ago now on port services. The dockers came down en masse from Antwerp and smashed a whole glass wall of the European Parliament building several hundred metres long. That's not a good way to get the attention of members of the European Parliament. We managed to succeed in rejecting that piece of legislation, but that type of lobbying effort made our job harder and not easier. Another example of bad lobbying is the current piece of legislation going through the European Parliament known as the Tobacco Products Directive. There the tobacco lobby, the tobacco manufacturers have really gone over the top. They have lobbied to such an extent that people, members of the European Parliament, have been turned off by the lobbying effort. You need to try to be balanced in your approach to lobbying in the European Parliament. In all of this, it's very important. I said earlier that you need to involve all of the actors at local, regional, sectoral and European level. But it's important that all of those voices are brought together and you sing with one voice when it comes to lobbying the European Parliament. In that respect, the work of the European Trade Union Intergroup inside the European Parliament has been very, very important. We act as an interface, the members involved in that intergroup, from all of the main political groups, with the European Trade Union Confederation and, when necessary, with the sectoral confederations. And we've had some really successful outcomes from that. That Port Services Directive, for example, that I mentioned a short while ago. Also the huge issue of the Services Directive, the last major revision of the whole mass of chemicals that are worked within the European Union. These have been extremely useful exercises. So it's important that we channel and focus the viewpoint of the trade union movement, and that we make sure at our end in the European Parliament that there is an interface that you can operate with. I hope you really get something out of the seminar there today. I look forward to you coming from that seminar and engaging in lobbying efforts in the near future in the European Parliament. Thank you very much.